I got asked a question a little while ago by a listener called Dan, who was confused by the performance figures shown online when he was looking and researching into which funds he should buy within his ISA. Confused? You're in the right place. Dan reached out and asked me, and now Dan, many months later, I did respond in an email at the time. But now, many months later, for the benefit of the entire community, welcome to another 5 Minute Friday. So when you're looking to research potential funds to invest in online and you're on your platform or you're on Morningstar or FE Trustnet or whatever, looking at this information, it can be a little bit confusing. Specifically, how do you know what is meant by the returns you see on a chart or on a table online? Well, let's put 5 minutes on the clock down here and let's dive into the computer so I can show you this through a screencast. Here I am on the Hargreaves Lansdown website. I could have chosen any platform, but Hargreaves Lansdown is one of the biggest, if not the biggest in the country. I happen to be a customer of Hargreaves myself, but I'm not logged in at the minute. This information we're going to look at is available to anybody. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to look at funds here. And actually I've been searching for some funds recently anyway, and the one I wanted to show you is here on the recently viewed funds list. Podcast listeners, I know you can't see this, but I'm hopefully going to still explain what the video viewers are looking at. So I'm going to look at the 7IM Income Class C, so the 7IM Income Fund, and you'll see there are two versions of it, income and accumulation. Now these are classes of shares in that fund. I'm going to look at the income class of shares in this fund, right? So what you're looking at now is a kind of a fact sheet. There's some tabs along the top where you can look at performance, you can look at some fund analysis, some important documents, the costs, and obviously Hargreaves want you to invest, so there's a big invest now button as well. You can see there's a performance table here on the right, and that is looking at discrete years. I'm recording this on the 18th of April, so this looks at the 5 discrete years up to the 17th of April 2018. So it's looking at April 17 to 18, April 16 to 17, so discrete years for the last 5 years up to this point. But there's a link here to say view fund chart, and I want to show you the difference because Dan was asking about what is meant by returns. What has a fund produced in terms of its growth or whatever? Well, most investment funds have two strings to their bow when it comes to providing returns to investors. One is the capital price, the value of the fund, which can go up or down, of course, and then the other is the dividends or the income produced by the fund. So we have capital and we have income. Now combine those two together and you have what's called the total return. And usually when funds quote what their performance has been over a given time scale, they're talking about the total return. Now for those watching on the video here, you can see there's a switch that gives me the option to switch between total return or just the price. And if I click that, you can see it's a very different chart, because now rather than the income being rolled into the fund as it's produced and compounding, now that income has been stripped out and we are just looking at the capital performance of the fund, and it's very different in this case. So if it's important to you that you understand how much the fund is yielding, you can see that on any fund fact sheet. It'll always be quoted. It does change, so the figure quoted will be the figure at this point, the current annual yield or income of the fund. If that's important to you, you can find it. But for the vast majority of people, it's what the fund has produced in total that matters, and that's the total return. If I scroll down here, there are two tables. One is the discrete calendar year performance. It's the same as was on the previous page. So what it has done in each single year, starting with the year up to today, and then the previous year, and then the previous year, and there's 5 years there. And then the bottom table is cumulative performance. So every time scale there, and you can see there's 3 months, 6 months, 1, 3, and 5 years. Those time scales all end at yesterday's date. So it's the 3 months up to yesterday, the 5 years up to yesterday. So that's cumulative performance over that time period, and the first table there is discrete calendar years. So I hope that's helpful. Really important to understand the difference between accumulation and income shares. With income shares, the income produced by the fund is treated differently rather than it being just rolled back up. With income shares, the income is sort of split out from the capital value. You can still use it to buy more shares and roll it up that way, but with accumulation shares, the income is all rolled up within the thing, and it just goes to increase. When the fund produces an income, it goes to increase each share value. I hope that's clear. It's a lot easier to do than it is to say. For most people, it's the total return that matters, and I would make your life easy. Always opt for accumulation units unless it's really important for you to split out the natural income produced by the fund, say to spend or whatever. Cool. Always good to know what you're looking at. Always be sure. Read a little bit underneath the performance tables. What does it and what doesn't it include? Is it after charges? It's almost always after charges, but that's fund charges. So remember, you may have to add a platform charge and possibly an advisor charge if you're working with an advisor as well. So the figures you see are just net of fund management charges. Make sure you understand the difference between accumulation and income units or shares of a particular fund you're going to buy. Really important distinction. And remember that yield really is only an issue if you're thinking of taking a natural income, having the fund pay you out each quarter or every 6 months. If you're building wealth, then it's all kind of rolled up together in total return. Hope that was helpful. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next week for another 5 Minute Friday. It's time for the weekend. Bring it on.